Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the Emperor, number 4. The Emperor on the Hermetic Kabbalistic tree sits in between wisdom, Chokmah, and beauty, Tiphereth. And the Hebrew letter assigned to it is He, which means the window. So windows are used to see, to allow entrance into the door. So last week we talked about how the Empress is the door, which is the portico, the means of moving in and out of something. So the Emperor is means of seeing. It is means of seeing after you have been born through the door, after you have been born into your vessel. So once we are born out of the portico, we can see in the physical realm, or vice versa. Once you are born into the spiritual realm, you can see spiritually. So they go hand in hand. And at the end of the day, they almost have the same utility. Okay? So we're going to move on from that. And I'll show you this other card. So we have the letter He, a little bit better. Here we have the sign Aries, which is the Emperor. And now Aries is the first zodiacal sign to appear in the zodiac. And when that happens, it basically represents like a new cycle. So after the 12 signs have occurred in the year, it restarts into Aries. So Aries is associated then with the number 1 astrologically, which represents purity. And the number 4 actually represents the first step into form because it forms the tetrahedron. 3 is just a shape. 4 actually creates a three-dimensional shape. So it creates the tetrahedron. All right, that's why when we talk about 4, people will say, "Oh, it's assigned to form, and it's assigned to reasoning, and it's assigned to logic." That's because to actually formulate ideas and manifest them into the material world, we need to have good logic. We need to have good reasoning. So therefore, the letter He in the tarot is assigned to reason. The Emperor in the tarot is assigned to reason. Moreover, to have good reason is to have good compartmentalization and to also have good decision making. So when we boil down reasoning, really it comes down to organization, compartmentalizing things, and ultimately decision. We need to have a decision for our reasoning. We need to have a decision for our organization. And we need to have good windows for that. We need to have good means of seeing, hearing, feeling the outside world so we can better organize our thoughts and how we see things. And with that comes wisdom, and also there's a sense of beauty to how we organize our thoughts. If we decide to organize our thoughts in negative patterns and unhealthy habits, we're not really going to have too much beauty in our lives. We're going to be surrounded by things that make us unhappy. We're going to be depressed. We're going to have, ups and downs. If we can see all different sides of things, if we can reason through difficult situations, if we can use logical, organization in tough situations, we can have a better life. So we're going to move on to the tarot. This is the Rider-Waite deck, and this is the Emperor. So we're just going to talk about a few details as usual. And first, I want to point to the water. You see the water in the background? It's very subtle in this card, but as we move through the series, it will become more apparent. So the water represents the waters of the High Priestess moving to the Empress, and the Emperor is overseeing the subconscious flow of the fertilized Empress, and it's overseeing the subconsciousness from the subconscious substance from the High Priestess. So we kind of talked about recently how it's actually the same waters, and the High Priestess is flowing down her robe towards the Empress, and our subconsciousness becomes worked, it becomes fertilized, so it's fertile. And as it passes through the Emperor, over, the Emperor overseeing it, he is reasoning and organizing our subconscious patterning. Now, because the Empress is associated with fertility, which is creation, she's also associated with imagination. And sometimes our imagination can just get out of hand. It can get wild and crazy, and our reasoning and logistical skills and our organization needs a little imagination sometimes, and the Emperor puts that in order. Now he puts that in order with his staff. Now it looks like the Venus symbol, which is represented by the Empress. The Empress and the Emperor are so tied up in so many different ways that I would not be able to give it to you in a 10 to 15 minute video. Even down to geometry, they are tied up immensely. But anyway, we're just going to talk about tarot. So the Emperor is modifying the Venus symbol, and he's asserting his self-consciousness. So organization and logic is the self-consciousness, over the waters of the High Priestess and the Empress. So he is using his scepter to modify the powers of Venus into a means of manifestation, into a means of conception, because he represents the number of formation. So one last thing I'd like to point out here is his beard and his white hair. His beard and his white hair represents eternity. So in our reality, the little molecules and the chemicals and biology is constantly being formed and reformed, but there's reasoning behind it. There is a reason a positive electron, a proton and electron, fuse together. There's reasoning behind that. There's a yin and a yang. There's balance. There's organization to how our universe, manifests itself. And what this is saying is that with that, there is time. There is an eternity of organizing and reorganizing everything. Energy is neither destroyed nor created. It is just reorganized. It's revibrated. It's like recapitulated. It is, it is basically vibration that just takes on other form. So his beard represents the eternity. that is associated with this reorganization, as things are constantly being reformed. They're constantly being modified into correct compartments so that people can understand our physical manifest, so that, you know, scientists keep discovering new combinations of molecules, new vaccines, new medicines. That is because the universe is allowing that those faculties of reasoning in our consciousness and melded with nature, because we are from nature, so really it's one thing, but it's melding our consciousness with the natural consciousness, with the consciousness of the universe. And so the emperor's beard represents the eternity that is attached to logistical reasoning and decision making. So moving on. This is the BOTA tarot. And here we actually can see the emperor overlooking the waters. Overlooking the waters here. And the emperor is wearing his armor, even more so in this picture, which shows that he is the shield. So in the other pictures, you know, in the other cards of the tarot, we saw the Empress had a shield next to her, and armor is a shield in itself, but armor is a mobile shield. It is a shield that can move. So because his reasoning faculties are strong, reasoning faculties are also a means of protection. You know, organization is a means of protection, it is a means of putting something in its place. If something's not in its place, it's chaotic. And when there is not order, okay, chaos without order is energy wasted. And this is exactly what this card is telling us. Chaos without order is energy wasted. And he is wearing the armor, protecting himself from the chaos, because he is the order. He is the order. So next we're going to move on to the Thomson Lang Tarot. And here this person, Thomson Lang, actually re-added the shield. And in some of the older tarot decks, you will see the shield. And the eagle represents some alchemical processes. But this is just a fun deck to look at. So now we have the Naphal Tarot. And you can see here he's sitting on the cube. Now we're going to look at the Mersai Tarot. We have the shield back. And the scepter is more flower-like. You can see where Paul Foster Case got his idea for the hat from his deck. And you can almost see water in this card. Interesting. Now we're going to look at the Mr. Crowley Tarot. Now, Mr. Crowley really took the tarot into his own hands. He really just created his own system. I mean, he kind of stuck to the original blueprints of the Golden Dawn Tarot, but he really kind of took his own stance on it. So I'll just point out a couple of details here. You can see the 4. And you can also see a sun. Now, the sun is exalted in Aries, which means that it feels at home. The sun is associated to collecting life. And when there's collection, there's organization. The sun is also associated with illumination. So windows traditionally create illumination. Now, Mr. Crowley decided to relabel the emperor into Sadi, okay, which means the fish hook. Now, in the progression of the tarot, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Now he still labeled the emperor number 4, but he rearranged the Kabbalistic meanings on the tree of life. So Sari means the fish hook. And if we go with the Empress as the door, and the door opening and closing the means of life, the portico, the fish hook pulls life out of the door. It creates new ideas. So when we're fishing, we're trying to grab fish out. Fish are alive. Grab fish out of the water. And Mr. Crowley was saying basically that form, or the number 4, the emperor, pulls the means of life out of the waters of spirit, out of the flowing consciousness of the invisible realm. Now, Mr. Crowley can have his opinions and that he has a lot of followers. I'm not speaking ill about Mr. Crowley. Some of his stuff is very good, but some of it is also semi-destructive. So if you're going to read Mr. Crowley's stuff, read it with, caution, and realize that sometimes the things he was saying were not always, conducive to, the growth of humanity and occultism. So next we're going to look at the Godfrey Dawson Tarot, the Hermetic Tarot. And there's just too much to go over here. We can see like a sun beaming down from the sky. And this is called the sun of the morning. And suns, sons as in sons of, birth from parents, are kind of like mornings arising. And mornings also bring new light to a day, and they bring growth. Just like the sign of Aries is growing out of spirit, growing from the sky, as it is the first thing to arise astrologically. And bees bring order to fertilization, because they go around and they fertilize, different plants and whatnot. They almost bring the order to plants being able to cross-pollinate and come to life. So if we didn't have bees, a vast majority of our plants would not survive. So with the bees is a sense of order within their workings and symbiosis with the flowers, with the Empress power, with the nature power. So that's all I've got for you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week.